Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros MLB. This is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It is me, Joey P. Joe Pisapia. With me is my boy, the Welsh, and today we're going to talk about 10 undervalued pitchers. I went back to last year's list to see how we did. I would say pretty good. Here are the names on last year's list that were undervalued that we thought you should be drafting. Blake Snell, he was pretty good, Welsh. I would say he was all right. Joe Ryan, good. Yuri Perez was a tease. We didn't quite get all that health. I know we were there. It just didn't work out. Kyle Bradish didn't work out for him, but it did work out for Cole Reagans, Carlos Rodon, Bailey Ober, some of those names. So we're going to try to hit on some names for 2025. Don't forget to subscribe to Fantasy Pros MLB. Of course, ring the bell till it goes ding for notifications so you are with us all draft season for the mocks, for the pods, and then leading off coming at you in just a few weeks. An unbelievable time to be alive and be excited. And while you're hanging out, watching the podcast, listening to the podcast, wherever you get your pods, you can subscribe there to the audio feed too. Of course, you should be doing some mock drafts, and you should be using Draft Wizard. Download the MLB Draft Wizard app today. It is the ultimate cheat code for you to get in there, start crafting your rosters for 2025, use the pick predictor, use all of the tools that are there for you, the cheat sheets and more, where you can go ahead, take the rankings, take the insights, and get the best teams you possibly can with the draft simulator on Draft Wizard. And of course, when you sync your leagues, you can use Draft Wizard right in your real draft. I used it for all the NFL drafts I did last year. It was incredible. I'm using it for MLB again this year. It's the way to go. And again, it's how you're going to dominate and embarrass all your friends and relatives and beat them into submission, because that's why we play fantasy sports. It's not about the love of the game. It's about embarrassing our friends and loved ones. So if you want to do that, Draft Wizard is the tool for you. Again, download the app right now or go to fantasypros.com/MLB Draft Wizard. All right, Welsh, first name on the list. We're going to kick it off. These are guys all currently, I want to emphasize currently as of early February recording this, that are going outside the top 100. I want to start with a guy that I've taken in some mock drafts, and you've already taken in a mock draft just yesterday, Grayson Rodriguez of the Baltimore Orioles. I feel like, again, this is a player we are just getting the teases of, right? We've seen what the upside looked like, and it's electric. Now, they let Corbin Burnes walk, and if you're going to let Corbin Burnes walk, you better be rest assured that they think that Grayson Rodriguez is ready to take that next step to truly be the ace. So I know the end of the year didn't work out the way the Orioles quite wanted. They fell short there of a World Series run, but still an incredibly young team. And Grayson Rodriguez still has the upside to be a fantasy ace, and you're getting him outside the top 100. Welsh, I don't see how that's not undervalued at this point.
Yeah, I do think he floats in this undervalued range. I'm not sure he's like the most screaming of all time, but because one of the things that you're doing is you are being like, all right, does he take that next big step? Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure that there's like a gajillion things that stand out to be like, oh my gosh, guys, he's going to do bop, bop, bop. But I will say that like outside the top 100, he's a guy that could easily float 75 picks or 25 picks higher into around the 75-ish range. Like, if someone told me right now he could be a top 20 SP this season, I really wouldn't be too shocked. There's great team support that's there. Fastball is complemented with two really great pitches. The changeup and slider both had a 27 or higher % K percentage. So those are two big strikeout pitches. With a fastball that did come down year over year, averaged 97 in 2023. It was 96 this past year, but it's still a great pitch. It had a 27% whiff rate. So you've got this great repertoire with a profile as far as against hitters that he was able to lower the zone contact rate that he was giving up. He lowered the hard hit while increasing his strikeout rate this past year. A little caveat would be that they are making the right field wall a little bit more hitter friendly left field wall where the right field wall is a little bit more pitcher friendly. So they're taking out some of that pitcher friendly environment, but home runs are not like really a huge crazy issue. He was a little bit better in the second half. He had a 3.86 ERA with an expected 3.72. If we get down to around 3.5 watch out projections, looking at the bat system, he's the 36th WAR pitcher, projected for a 10-8 record, 150 innings, around a 9.5 K per nine, and a 2.7 walk per nine. I think there is some room for growth there. I think top 30 makes a decent amount of sense. And outside the top 100, if you're looking for actual true young pitchers to take that next big step, he is one of those guys. So like I buy the undervalue. I don't think he's the biggest screamer of this list, but he's also the highest. So it's like probably not going to feel that way as well. Grayson definitely has an undervalued tag attached to his name when guys like Bailey Ober and stuff are going higher.
Look, I do all the pitcher write-ups for the Fantasy Baseball Black Book, now available on Amazon. And Grayson Rodriguez for me is one of my favorite guys because I'm somebody that likes to go offense early. And you've seen that in the mock drafts that I do here on the program, right? And when I'm looking for my tandem starting pitchers, right? I'm looking for guys, okay, I'm going to look around like I like Imanaga, I like Framber Valdez, I like guys like Aaron Nola who are just very steady every single year, right? Guys that I feel like I can count on. And then I want to get somebody that's got a little bit of something extra. And I feel like Grayson Rodriguez is one of these guys that got a little bit of something extra where there's upside. He could be a fantasy ace. So to me, if you're starting a rotation there with one of those steady 1As and you back it up with a guy like Grayson Rodriguez, that's the recipe where you could really have something special and then a great offense on top of it. Next guy on our list, Justin Steele, friend of the show. He was in my must-haves a couple years ago. I've always been ahead of the curve, I feel like, on Justin Steele. He's going at 121 overall, the consensus ADP rankings over at FantasyPros. I'm in on the Cubs this year. I think they smell blood in the water in this division, right? St. Louis has taken a massive step back. I think you look at Milwaukee losing Devin Williams, losing William Adames. There's opportunity here for Chicago to step into this void. They acquired they acquired Kyle Tucker, and now they have an opportunity with Justin Steele and Shota Imanaga and this pitching staff. They signed Matthew Boyd to really kind of push in a little bit and say, hey, we're going to go all in for 2025. And if Steele can just get out there and make the 30 starts, I think he's a tremendous value. I think one of the more underappreciated starters the last couple of years when healthy.
Yeah, it's funny too, because everybody knows that pays attention to our little world. I met Justin and hung out with him before the season last year. And one of the things that stood out outside of his love for FantasyPros was him just talking up Imanaga. Like he was on that. He was talking up Imanaga big time. But the thing is, not enough people are talking about Justin because like the profile on what he's been doing, he's not the biggest, craziest strikeout pitcher in the world, but he had, 24% K percentage, still maintained a relatively low walk rate. But the really big positives have been his maintenance of being able to create just bad contact against 212 batting average, expected batting average against, under 4% or under 4.2% barrel rate, which was under what it was last year. 3.07 ERA, a 2.74 expected ERA, which is fantastic. He's got more run support this year. And a crazy thing too, if you go and look, he was phenomenal in the first half last year. Looking at your splits, I think it was 2.71. He raised a run in the second half of 3.72 in less innings, but 4 of 6 months pitched last year, he had a sub-3 ERA. There were only 2 months that kind of inflated. So, Justin's he's got a good strikeout repertoire. He's going to get low batting averages. He maintains his ERA. There's more run support. He goes outside the top 100 and he kind of falls out of like the sexy big strikeout pitchers that people are going for. I really want to see the health this year, and I want to get back to those big innings because I think there's an extra value on pitchers that are going to get, I've said this before, 180 is the new 200 or 220 as far as innings pitched. There's just not enough guys that are doing that. If Justin could stay healthy and you get 175 out of him, he is going to beat this value. Definitely an underrated pitcher, maybe because he's not flashy is a good word to say.
Well, when he got 173 out of him just all the way back in 2023, he was an all-star. He finished 5th in the Cy Young voting. And he had 176 strikeouts, just 36 walks. I mean, that is incredible strikeout to walk ratio. I mean, that's a guy who's going to dominate in the and look, the FIP every year, 320, 302, 323. He's not a fluke. You look at these ERAs in the low threes, that's Justin Steele and does not get enough credit. Jack Flaherty coming in next at 138, back in Detroit. Somebody last year, very controversial. I mean, every show, when is Welsh going to talk about Jack Flaherty's regression? And look, Jack Flaherty turned in a really good season, and now he went back to Detroit, which I got to tell you, if you had concerns about him, I think maybe this would be something that would be more positive, right? If he landed back in a new spot, maybe you feel differently about Jack Flaherty, but because he went back to where all that success was basically regenerated for him with Detroit, and whoever those voices were inside his head, very Randy Orton-esque, whatever you want to call it, I think that's probably a big positive for 2025. Does that assuage any fears of a 2025 Jack Flaherty disappointment for you, Welsh?
No, I mean, I love him going back there. If anything, yeah, like playoff innings, like we saw what happened with Zach Gallen when you stacked up all those innings that maybe, body wasn't ready for. He had 144 the year prior. This past year, he put up 162, and then you had, through the World Series. So that could be something to monitor. But as a Detroit Tiger, he had a 3.13 ERA in 95 innings. Dude posted almost 200 strikeouts in 164 innings last year. He was sick. 3.17 ERA. Expected was just like a tiny bit higher. But I'm very excited about him being in this spot. He posted 36% whiff rates on his 2 second most used pitches, 36% whiff rate on his slider, 43% on his knuckle curve, while putting up, a decent fastball. The fastball, by the way, at a 28.7% K percentage, which that's high for a fastball. He's getting big strikeouts. He's in a spot where he, lifted by Tariq Skubal, a solid young offense in there. We've seen him kind of just step up in his game to be a dominant strikeout pitcher that has lower ERA numbers, which that's what gets me excited. And the biggest one, here were his 4 rolling walk percentages from 2020 to 2023. 9.4%, 8.1%, 13.2%, and 10.2. This past year, 5.2. He became a high strikeout, low walk. That equates to around almost 25K minus walk percentage, which is like elite. You give me that again, and you give me 170 innings on Flaherty. Flaherty is a deal, by the way. So the undervalued tag to this 138 on the consensus ranks, he just still hasn't quite moved up. People haven't caught up to him. I love Flaherty. Flaherty is projected on the bat to have a 10.59 K per 9, which is crazy for a starting pitcher, and a sub 4 ERA. I think Jack Flaherty is a smash pick for your SP. You can get him SP4 in a lot of instances. I really, really love Flaherty. This is one. I mean, I did put him on here, so that's why it was one of my favorites. But I love Flaherty as
there was a time where you were not believing into Jack Flaherty.
Well, like health happen and stuff like that. Yeah,
I get it. I mean, look, if you go back to the year before, it was ugly. It's been ugly for a while with Jack Flaherty, but good to see him back on track. Smart move by the Tigers too, especially if you think Skubal is going to be out of your range sooner than later. Next guy on our list at 139 overall in the ADP, Bryan Woo of the Seattle Mariners. Now, Woo, a guy that, I think people forget that as a minor league pitcher, we're talking about an elite level K per 9 guy. We're talking about like in the 12s. Like, this is a dude. And there is a situation where if he's healthy and he is consistent, he is going to fit right in, if not maybe even start to join the conversation of some of these other guys at the top of that rotation. Now, do I think he's as good as Logan Gilbert? No, but could he be Bryce Miller-ish? I think he can. I think he is right on that precipice. If he can take some of that strikeout rate back in 2025 and get that number back up, that's the key for him for that fantasy level we're looking at. But this is a very good young pitcher regardless, and I think people should be very excited about. He's just 25 years old. There's a lot more here. Good size, 6'2", 205. He's got a good frame. He's got what you're looking for in terms of all of those other factors. And I think last year was sort of the coming out party, and now I think a tremendous value where you're looking to build out your rotation. What do you think of Woo in 25?
I like how you said that. It's it was the coming out party. He's had such crazy trajectory. I was at his I think it was his pro debut in rookie ball, where he just flew through the season. They went to the AFL, and then halfway through the next year, he's in the majors. It's crazy. And then last year, he puts up 121 innings with a 2.89 ERA, totally built like a Seattle Mariners pitcher. It's low walks, the lowest 2.8 walk per 9 is bonkers, with a sub 3 ERA and an expected sub 3 ERA. He generates weak contact across the board. His problem is he just doesn't have a big strikeout thing going on. 21% K percentage. He uses a whole bunch of pitches. None of them are big whiff. It's George Kirby like. And the thing is funny is he doesn't tinker. Because I talked to him in spring. I've said this a million times. Talked to him in spring. He's like, I'm not adding a split finger. He's just he's his guy. It's low walk. It's low contact against. If you generate that over, let's say 150 innings this year, there's immense value in it. And what I really like about him is sometimes when you go into high strikeout pitchers, sometimes they have higher walk rates. You could all of a sudden have some inflated whip. Bryan Woo's got the support of one of the best pitcher environment in Seattle. Doesn't have enough run support right now, but he's also low walk. He's going to help your whip. I think he's got the chance to go deeper into games. And if he finds a home between his pitches, he threw his sinker and four seam, a combined over 70% usage. And then it's like 9% slider, changeup, sweeper. My point is if he finds a home for one of those pitches to be a strikeout pitch and he increases his K percentage, now we're talking about him being not just like Walmart or Walgreens George Kirby, but he might just be George Kirby Lite, and he could really move up. But I think there's a really nice baseline with Bryan Woo. He definitely is he's a target for a lot of people, but he's right around the 150 range. He is undervalued for what he does to a team, and he's a target. He's definitely a target.
If he's your number 4 starter in your rotation for fantasy, how do you feel about that?
I love that if you paired it with some high strikeout guys. So let's say you got Garrett Crochet, Blake Snell, and then you waited and you got Flaherty. There's a little bit of maybe walk concern with a guy like Blake Snell. There's huge strikeouts in there. Bryan Woo would be a huge complementary piece to that.
Yeah, good point. Next guy on our list, also a strikeout guy. In 150, Yusei Kikuchi, who, look, man, we got to give some credit here to this guy. Going back 2022 with Toronto, 11 K per nine, 2023, 9.72 K per nine. Last year with 2 teams, 10.55. The strikeouts are there. Now wins might be hard to come by for the Angels in 2025, but this was an intriguing signing to me in the offseason because I was really curious where he was going to land, mainly because when I was doing the Black Book write-up on him, the ERA was at 4.05, but the xERA was 3.70. The FIP was 3.46. The xFIP was 3.20. Like all these other indicators, like, man, Kikuchi was really much better than the ERA even told you, and you're getting big-time strikeouts, and you're getting big-time value. This is a player going right on the precipice of 150 overall, and to me, you could do a lot worse. Again, you chasing wins with him? No, but are you chasing strikeouts and trying to beef up towards the end and late? I think the answer is yes, 33 years old, and a guy that I think is now established in the major leagues here, and one of these tough lefties, and sometimes those lefties take a little bit longer to figure things out.
Yeah, the thing I really love is I think he is we talk about like stats you can get later or you can't get later. It is hard in the hitter terms. It's hard to like pick up average later. People used to be like, oh, you couldn't get stolen bases, so that's why you went high. You now can. Some could argue it's hard to get like elite power late in drafts. When you go over to the pitching side, I would argue to get like really good K potential, you have to like later in drafts, you're usually betting on like prospects or rookies or someone to move, into a rotation spot that's not projected. Kikuchi is not those things. Kikuchi is a guy that has solidified role inside of a rotation. He has 167 innings over 2 straight years, and he's got an interesting profile that he just had a career high K percentage with a career low walk percentage. So it's like the Ks went up and the walks actually went down. He's got some worrisome, like gives up some hard hit stuff. He registered, max EV of 119, 9% barrel is very, very concerning. But all 4 pitches he throws, 25% or higher K percentage. Every pitch he throws is a potential strikeout pitch with a walk rate that is declining. The ERA tells us something as well. I think Kikuchi is just a really good piece to add to your rotations, your starting rotations in fantasy, especially if you're maybe a tiny bit devoid of some strikeouts. You got some middle line guys. You're like, hey, I got Logan Webb over here. I took Bryan Woo. Let Kikuchi boost up those strikeouts a little bit.
All right, these guys you should be adding to your cheat sheets. And remember, the cheat sheet creator is available for you right now. Enhance your fantasy baseball strategy with the cheat sheet creator. You can seamlessly integrate and merge all the rankings from all the different experts. You can take Welsh, myself, whoever you think is really good at doing these rankings here. Make Mike Mayer, maybe. I guess we could throw him in there. He's pretty good. Begrudgingly, I'll give it to Mayer. Organize players into tiers, add personal notes. You can streamline all of that process for you and automatically update the cheat sheet with the latest expert consensus rankings to reflect the most current information so that when you go into your draft, you are ready to kick ass and take names. Use the cheat sheet creator at fantasypros.com/cheat sheet, or again, just download Draft Wizard app and use the cheat sheet creator on there too. Next guy on our list coming in at 167 overall consensus ADP. Who'd have thought that the Mets would start to become the organization to turn around reclamation project pitchers? They did it with Severino last year, and they also did it with Sean Manaea, who moved to the extreme left side of the rubber and all of a sudden became Chris Sale. I mean, I don't know what happened there, but it was dude, the guy was tremendous. He, in the second half, had a 4-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. I have seen Shohei Ohtani take very few uncomfortable at-bats. In the playoffs, he looked all kinds of befuddled against Sean Manaea. It was fun to watch. As a Mets fan, it was very entertaining. I saw Shohei Ohtani take one of the worst swings I've ever seen him take against Sean Manaea, where he basically struck out and went, okay, I'm going to go sit down. He could not pick up the baseball. It was incredibly difficult. Now the big question is the ADP is here for a reason because people are saying, okay, can you do it again? To be honest with you, Welsh, at this stage in the ADP at 167, I'm taking that risk there. I absolutely think he can. This Mets team is going to be good defensively. They're going to be good offensively. And I think at the same time, you're looking at Sean Manaea being in a very comfortable situation where he's confident. Sure, the playoff innings, all the extra stuff, that's fine. But Manaea, another guy that feels like he's just been around forever. He has bounced around everywhere. And that typically means it's a guy with talent. You're just waiting for somebody to crack the code. And it feels like last year it got cracked.
That's an interesting way to say it, that the code was cracked. Part of that was because of a pitch mix change. And that's usually what it is. It's just some of these guys just, refining to find that perfect
the arm angle, the move to the other side of the rub, like all these little things. And of course, as you're saying, the pitch mix too, the combination of those three things, he wasn't good. He was elite.
Well, arm angle is really interesting. You can see on Baseball Savant, they have these arm angle charts. In 23, he had like a 28-degree launch angle, which was the second highest of his career. He dropped it down to the lowest of his career to 22. That's dramatic. I know that doesn't mean like a whole bunch of everybody, but like he dropped dramatically his arm even more kind of, coming from a side plane than he had ever done before. He did that while changing his pitch mix from going primary four-seam fastball and changeup the year prior, which accounted for over 70% of pitches thrown, to going primary sinker and then sweeper. He threw the sweeper almost 20% of the time. That thing had a 41% K percentage. It was devastating. So, you're inducing just like lower quality contact with a sinker, and you're setting that up with this big sweeping sweeper that had crazy strikeout percentages. And then, he's still able to mix in. You've got that changeup he threw 11% of the time, the four seam still kind of keeping guys honest. And that changeup sweeper combination, that was the fix. The arm angle equated to and he lowered the velocity, by the way, of the sweeper. It just became his big devastating pitch. It's the pitch du jour. Or 2 years ago, it was a sweeper. This past year, it was a splitter, but it's worked for him. He found the combination. I do think he is undervalued. He's not exactly my biggest target on the planet, but you know what? He's going to get innings with an offense of Soto and Lindor leading the way. He had an expected ERA that supported. It was still under 4, and he's got a big, massive strikeout pitch. It's kind of hard to argue. The other thing I really liked, he was first to second half almost the same pitcher. Around a 3.4 ERA on both sides. So he was consistent throughout the year. So I think this pitch mix really works for him. It's enabling him to be a higher strikeout guy, essentially 25%. I just love for him to walk a little bit less, but he's making it work. And you're getting into free range. It's kind of hard. Like, I know people are like always arguing about everything anybody does. Like, oh, this guy's undervalued. But it's like outside the 150, like I really don't know how anybody makes arguments that these guys aren't.
I'd rather have him as my number 4 than Bryan Woo in my rotation. If you're going to be
unless you think they're going to blow up and completely regress. Like,
and look, the innings total is a big one, Welsh, right? The innings total is the thing where you look at it and you go, oh, innings 180 something, and then on that's a high, and then on top
the jump from year
innings,
to year,
jump too. But he is an older pitcher. He's not a slight guy. Like I feel like it's sustainable, and I feel like mentally too, to come back where he had so much success, kind of like Flaherty, that conversation. When somebody gets you on track, the confidence when you take them out, it just oozes. And that's why, like, I have a morbid Frankie Montas curiosity based on Severino and Manaea, because it's not like Montas at times when he was healthy wasn't a good pitcher in the major leagues. When he was with the Athletics, he was a good pitcher for a while there. And then injuries obviously derailed that, but we'll see. Again, I want to emphasize the word morbid curiosity. Brandon Pfaadt at 180, friend of this channel too. We've been very into Brandon Pfaadt for a long time, and I think it's just completely unfair. I think this ADP is absurd. A guy who's going to get you, K per 9, 9K per 9 in that range, right? He's going to give you a strikeout an inning. He had a 4.71 ERA, but that's not the story. His xERA was a full run lower. His FIP was 361. His xFIP is 358. If you tack on, let's say, a 3.61 ERA to Brandon Pfaadt, there's no way he's at this ADP. I think this is just lazy fantasy and lazy drafting. And Brandon Pfaadt is a guy that I'm going to have a lot of shares of. When he's on an offense, scores a crap ton of runs. Yeah, I'm going to take Brandon Pfaadt.
Well, I think the biggest negative though is people are looking at how the season ended and it kind of fell apart. He had a 3.97 ERA in the first half, but Joe, 5.93 in the second half. That was a 2-run jump. His final 2 months of the season, he had a 6 and a 7 ERA, and people are just losing their minds about it. The argument I would have is like career high. He went from 96 innings to 181 this past year. The expected ERA is a full run higher. I also think from just like a pitch standpoint, he's actually kind of like Manaea. It's like you've got this like fastball sinker situation that is put with one of the best sweepers in baseball. It's an elite sweeper. It's an elite strikeout pitch. It generated a 35% K percentage. His problem has been homers, and he can't get out. He has like a 1.5 whip against lefties and a sub 1 whip against righties. So, I would assume that might be maybe a pitching coach. That's why Brett Strom was fired. Also, is they moved him on the rubber a little bit, but maybe it's just a little bit more of a changeup to be a little bit more battly against left-handed hitters. But he's working on that fastball, becoming a little bit better. But again, it is one of the best sweepers in all of baseball. Expected numbers are on his side. Year over year, he did lower quality of contact against. Hard hit percentage went down under 40%. Barrel went from 11 the year prior down to 8. He's a young pitcher that's making moves. He was phenomenal in the first half. I think the strikeout potential could pop up. He was around 24%. And by the way, even in his struggles with the fastball and the homers, 5% walk rate. That's great. You're almost a 20% K minus walk percentage guy. I'm a stupid homer with Brandon Pfaadt. I've watched him for years in the minors. I think this guy can be an elite pitcher, and we have seen some massive adjustments he has made since he's been up in the majors, and people are kind of crying about, oh, I'm going to be this. It's like, no, man, the sweeper's gotten better. He's throwing more than 2 pitches. They've moved him on the rubber. I think you're going to see another big jump. Expected stats are kind of telling that story. And if the homers drop at all, Brandon Pfaadt is going to blow past this. And again, this is outside the 150. Manaea and Brandon Pfaadt are 2 great like SP 5s or 6 or something you could throw into your fantasy rotations that have got a ton of upside.
Look, he jumped from 96 innings to 180. I think it was just fatigue. He had never crossed 100 major league innings before. He's 25 years old. I am not concerned. I'm not worried.
He's always sweating. If you ever watch him, he's always just red, sweating.
Like I said, I think you can attribute it to fatigue and hitting a wall and just like trying mentally and physically to get past that. That out of the way now, all the other numbers are really good. I'm in on Brandon Pfaadt. You can't get me off the Brandon Pfaadt. I don't care what the finish was. I think it was just a hitting a wall scenario. So now I want him. Next guy on the list at 191. I don't remember putting this guy in. Is this a guy that Welsh replaced here last minute?
This is a Welsh replacement guy.
I did not put him in, so I am not going to speak to him. Zach Eflin, 191. So, all right. Own this for the people, Welsh. Give him the lowdown on Eflin.
All right. Well, if you like Bryan Woo, let me present Zach Eflin to you. At 191, he had a 3.59 ERA, an expected 3.67 ERA. He had a 19% K percentage, which sucks. That's not good. But he paired it with a 3.5 walk percentage. It's like 2% off of the strikeout rate of Bryan Woo and 1% higher walk rate. It's one of the elite walk rates out there. Quality of contact, we need a little bit more improvement on. Like Bryan Woo has that, and that's why Woo is costing more. But if you're looking for like a mid ERA guy we're talking about Baltimore. We started the show with Grayson Rodriguez. You've got win potential. You got a guy that's gone 165 at least in 2 straight seasons, so he can eat some innings. He's really low walk. You're going to have low whip. Good ERA. You're just not going to have a big stance as far as like strikeouts go. I like the repertoire. Maybe there's some strikeout potential, but again, I think there's just solid run support for a guy that can eat innings and is not going to just blow up your team. So you're talking about not all underrated pitchers have to be these big, flashy, explosive strikeout guys. We love that, but sometimes we also need to mark, this is a guy that's not going to hurt my whip. He's going to eat innings. He's got win potential with his team, and that is a value. And at almost 200, Zach Eflin's a value. So that's why we had to throw him in here. He can be a little bit boring, but a 3.5 ERA guy going around 200 on Baltimore that's going to get probably projected around 180 innings, that's undervalued.
All right. You know who's not boring going outside the top 200? A 6'6" tall drink of water in Cincinnati, who throws hard and he's left-handed. It's Nick Lodolo. I'm buying back in. He wasn't good in the minor leagues. He was dominant in the minor leagues, okay? 5 minor league seasons, roughly 96 innings pitched over them. So again, a smaller sample size, but we're talking about domination here. We're talking about a .70 ERA. We're talking about a strikeout rate of 13.9, a walk rate of 2 walks per nine. Like, this is a guy that, I understand health has been troubling. I understand the ERAs have been high. I understand, all the things that have gone wrong with Nick Lodolo. But you could also look at the trajectory of Hunter Green and say, okay, well, last year Hunter Green really started to put it together. And Lodolo and Green are two very special arm talents. If they can learn about pitching, right, at the major league level, this is a guy that could really take off in 2025. And I'm looking at Lodolo as one of these guys I'm drafting as a bench pitcher that has the ability to basically end up being like a number 3 fantasy starter if things break right. And if they don't, it doesn't cost me a lot to find out. I think to have that sort of upside makes him very undervalued outside of top 200. And I like this Reds team in 25.
Okay, so this is an interesting one where I had Eflin. I almost took this off, and I was going to replace with Chris Sanchez. Really love the value of Chris Sanchez, even though he's coming up with the strikeout potential.
I like him too.
But I left this also to get your take on it and to say that, like, I have had obsessions with Nick Lodolo for years. I did a couple years ago, I was doing, every other week, it was like, hey, listen, you want to trade for somebody, you got to trade for Lodolo. It's the injuries that keep me off. The guy hasn't gone over 115 innings over the last 3 years.
Sure.
But if he does stay healthy, back to your point, he had an expected ERA that was a full run lower this past year than his actual ERA. He has got one of the nastiest curveballs. It's ridiculous. It just, the top to bottom drop. It's a huge strikeout pitch that he sets up with a fastball, which, by the way, a fastball that was better year over year. It was a full mile per hour faster, went from 93.2 up to 94.1. And he's got a changeup in there that had a 25% whiff rate. I think that changeup needs to get a little bit better, and then he's going to be able to establish himself as like more of a threat because the walks are still a little bit high. And I think he's a guy that should run higher K percentage. He had 28% 2 years ago. It was down to 24% this past year. If he can stay healthy, I do think he has the makings of being kind of like maybe the designation would be more sleeper, but I will give you this from the underrated standpoint is what you said. If he breaks right, things could be big and he is undervalued. And if he doesn't, we're now in a range for this pitcher and the next one. They're outside the top 200. You can get into a streaming battle and you can just start streaming pitchers if it doesn't work out. So where this isn't necessarily my big pick, I do buy exactly what you're selling. I think I just have like serious worries about the injury. This dude cannot stay healthy. I don't know what it's going to take. I'm not sure the Reds have this big, great track record of pitcher health. I mean, I guess Hunter Green has turned it around, but Lodolo hasn't been able to stay out. So it's kind of a prove me type of thing.
To your point, Sanchez is safer. That's why I agree 100%. Just looking for safety, Sanchez is safer. I also think just as an asset, Lodolo is fascinating because if he looks really good coming out of spring, right, and he's blowing guys away in April and May, I think you could trade him for a boatload because of the innings issue you're talking about that might creep up later in the season. So I think he's like an asset more than anything when I'm talking about, like, I want to have assets. I want to have talent on my roster to try and make the moves when I need to make moves and get the best of the upside of a player. Last one on our list, a guy that has teased greatness before, another left-handed starter, now finds himself on the Philadelphia Phillies at 233, Jesús Luzardo, a guy that has been argued on this show by many an analyst for many, many years and has been around for a while. He's had some health issues, some performance issues, and then some peak, right? Now he's going from Miami to Philadelphia. You can't ask for a better jump, right? In terms of run support, defense, right? Just environment, everything's going to be much better for him. Do you see Luzardo as a guy that you want to take a shot to buy back in on in 2025? Because it feels like going outside the top 200 for a guy who not that long ago was looking like a dominant guy on the rise, now is a starting pitcher that feels almost forgotten.
Yeah, and I think the big thing, I did this show on my in this league of talking sleepers, and Frank Stanfield had targeted Jesús Luzardo as a sleeper of his. And I think it's really interesting because there are some guys I've just taken this token with where you look at a player and you're just like, they were really bad and nothing tells a story from last year. But sometimes that's the anomaly. Bo Bichette is an example of that on the offensive side. Like you look and it's just like, it was so bad last year that it's like, that feels more of the anomaly than the career. And you could be wrong. Luzardo's kind of the same thing because last year, only 66 innings, tons of injuries, a 5 ERA, absolutely inflated, hard contact through the roof. He lost a mile per hour, over about a mile and a half per hour on his fastball. All of those things are not great, and it didn't generate any whiffs. But that is more than the anomaly than anything because the years prior, 3.32 in 100 innings, 3.58 ERA, tons of strikeouts. He had 208 strikeouts just a year prior to that with lower whip numbers, 28% K percentage in 23, 21 this past year, lower walk rate, 3.5 expected actual ERA the year prior. So you look at all of that and you go, man, health was a huge problem with him last year. He has shown bigger fastball, bigger strikeout, and now he's going to go to a much better team, much better environment. So if he's healthy and you got the run support in Philly with that strikeout potential, also pointing out, I said Chris Sanchez, I think they are doing great things with their pitchers. We might be able to kind of refix.
Oh, yeah.
Sanchez is working on a new fourth pitch here.
They got Wheeler to that level that we were always told Wheeler was. But as you know, when you watch him for the Mets, you would see him do that for a start or two, but never consistently. And Wheeler's become one of the best pitchers in baseball.
But also, like, Ranger Suarez had this really
Ranger Suarez, another great. They've done a great job. Too bad they can't get a bullpen straight to save their life over there. But you know, they certainly look. Is it a tough ballpark in terms of home runs? Sure, but you know, going to the point you're making too about taking a flyer on a guy like Luzardo who has a strikeout rate. Let's also not forget that he is just 27 years old. We are kind of spoiled. He's been around so long because he was such a big hyped prospect that I think there's a little Luzardo fatigue in the fantasy baseball space. Would you think that that's irrelevant?
Well, I just think, I think people are just done. Like they're over it. Like
but
fatigue
why?
is.
He's 27. Is it time to give up on him at 27? Like,
well, and to be fair, like, again, 2023 wasn't that bad of a season. I think there's some fixes in there. You can see he had the highest arm angle of his career this past season when there's struggles. Maybe that speaks to the injury and how he was able to throw. Get that arm back down a little bit that you're healthy. How about go and pitch with one of the best changeups in baseball in Chris Sanchez, and you can learn that. This guy throws it 20% of the time. I think there's a lot of trajectory things that are working in favor of Luzardo. And if you want to just look at more of a bigger window than just last year, like I said, I think the track record speaks for itself that he legitimately could be a 28% K guy, lower walks, better ERA, and now he's got a better support system around him and better offense. And most importantly, he's undervalued because he's free. 233 overall out. It's almost the end of your draft. Luzardo's just a great value pick that really could hit, and that's why we targeted him as one of the undervalued pitchers.
Grayson Rodriguez, Justin Steele, Jack Flaherty, Bryan Woo, Yusei Kikuchi, Sean Manaea, Brandon Pfaadt, Zach Eflin, Nick Lodolo, and Jesús Luzardo. Those are the names on our list, but who's on your list? Drop your comments below. Your most undervalued, underappreciated ADP pitchers in the 2025 fantasy baseball draft season. We love to hear from you on the YouTube channel. Drop your comments below, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell till it goes ding for notifications. And download Draft Wizard and start getting your mock on. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For the Welsh, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.